You don't end up in a place like Clearbrook unless life knocks you sideways. For me, that happened early in 2021. I was 23, broke, and fresh off a series of maybes that didn't pan out. College had fizzled after my mom's cancer came back and our savings dried up in co-pays and chemo. My dad took off before the first hospital stay even ended. Divorce papers came 6 months later. I didn't blame her. I blamed life. We moved to Clearbrook, Iowa because her cousin had a spare room and it was cheap. Real cheap. Just cornfields, rusting water towers, and one main road where nothing really happened. I told myself it was temporary. Just a pause. But time passes differently in towns like that. Days blur. I applied anywhere that had lights still on, ended up landing a job at Quick Fuel, a 24-hour gas station on the edge of town. 2 pumps, 1 flickering sign. Half the lights buzzed like hornets when you walked under them. The freezer door stuck every time you opened it. The coffee machine hadn't worked since 2019. Rick, the manager, hired me after a 5-minute interview that involved more staring than talking. He was in his 40s, maybe 50s, wore those thick drugstore reading glasses and had the permanent sweat-glossed forehead of someone who never did much but still managed to breathe heavily. His idea of training was standing too close and calling women sweetheart with a grin that made your skin crawl. By the 3rd shift, I already had a system. Scrub the sticky floors, ignore Rick's jokes, and keep earbuds in one ear just to feel less alone. I got used to the drunk guys stumbling in from the Driftwood bar down the road, used to the late-night truckers and the kids trying to steal energy drinks. But I wasn't ready for the man who came in every night at 1:15 a.m. Same time, same steps, same stare. He didn't steal, didn't talk. He just stood in the back aisle and watched me. And I swear to God, the scariest thing wasn't that he did it once. It's that he did it again. And again. Like I was part of his routine. He wore the same thing every night. Brown coat, gray work boots, and jeans that were too clean for someone walking around at 1 a.m. His beard was patchy, like he gave up shaving halfway through. First night I thought maybe he was just weird. You get weird in places like this. But the second night when I saw him again, same time, same spot, I knew it wasn't a coincidence. He never grabbed a drink, never looked at the shelves, just wandered in slow, drifted toward the back where the freezer hummed, and stared. Not at the snacks, not at the clock, at me. It wasn't flirtatious. It wasn't even aggressive. It was colder than that, like he was studying me, measuring. After a few nights, I worked up the nerve. I said, "Can I help you find something?" He smiled. A crooked little thing. Didn't answer. Then he left. That would have been the end of it if it didn't keep happening. Every night, same time, silent, watching. Rick didn't notice at first. He was too busy checking out Instagram models and pretending he had back pain so he could go home early. One night, after Rick left, I went to lock my bike out front, and there he was, standing 5 feet away from it, facing me. I stopped. He didn't. Then he said, "You don't live far. You walk that way, right?" My mouth dried up. I didn't answer, just turned and walked back inside, locked the door, and sat behind the counter with a pocket knife I found in the lost and found drawer. When I told Rick the next day, he waved it off. "Small town. People know each other's routines," he said, sipping a gas station coffee like it was fine wine. I wanted to scream. But you learn quick in towns like Clearbrook. Nobody takes you seriously until something bad actually happens. And even then, they still might not. I started dreading every shift. The hours from midnight to 3 a.m. felt like they stretched forever. I'd scan the security cams constantly, leave the lights on bright. I even stuck a pair of scissors in my back pocket just in case. Then came the calls. It started a few days after that parking lot moment. My phone would ring just after midnight. Unknown number, no message, no ID. When I picked up, nothing, just breathing. Heavy, slow, deliberate. I tried to laugh it off at first, maybe Rick being an idiot, maybe prank calls from bored teens. But then I saw him again, Not inside this time, but standing across the street under the one working streetlight. Just standing there, watching. That night, I pulled out my phone, raised it like I was calling the cops, and he turned and walked off like it was a routine too. I started biking faster, started looking behind me more. I didn't feel safe anywhere. Not at work, not on the ride home, not even in my room. My mom's old friend Patty gave me pepper spray. "You got a weird look lately," she said. "Like you're waiting for something to happen." I switched to afternoon shifts. Told Rick I couldn't do nights anymore. He got all huffy and dramatic. "Maybe you're not cut out for small-town grind," he said. I bit back what I really wanted to say and just walked out, because I knew what he wouldn't admit. I wasn't the first girl to switch shifts, and I wouldn't be the last. I quit 2 weeks later. No drama, no confrontation. I just stopped showing up and left my name tag in the mailbox out back. No one called, not even Rick. Like they were used to people vanishing from that schedule. I moved in with my cousin about 20 minutes out, near Cedar Rapids. She had a dog, a locked garage, and more streetlights. It felt like another universe. For the first few nights, I kept checking the window, kept expecting him to appear. Outside the fence, beside the mailbox, behind the shed. He never did, but the feeling didn't leave. The sense that I'd been picked somehow, that I'd been part of someone's quiet little pattern, and just didn't know how close I got to slipping into it. I blocked the unknown number, changed my route if I saw anyone walking too close. I even started watching videos about situational awareness, self-defense, how to tell if you're being followed. I didn't tell my mom the full story. She had enough going on, and she already blamed herself for everything. 3 months later, I got a Facebook message from a girl named Emily. She said, "Hey, you worked nights at Quick Fuel, right? Do you know anything about a guy in a brown coat? He's been showing up around 1 a.m., doesn't buy anything, just watches." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I closed the app. I never answered her. You never really stop looking over your shoulder after something like that. You just get better at hiding it. I work at a coffee shop now. The hours are decent. The customers don't linger too long. I keep pepper spray in my purse and a pocket knife in my glove box. Not paranoid, just prepared. Sometimes I still wonder what he wanted, if he was lonely, or if I'd been in real danger. But I think the worst part is never knowing, and knowing someone else might be in it now, because people like him don't stop. They just shift targets. I drive by Quick Fuel sometimes, out of habit, still flickering, still open, still waiting. In August of 2019, I transferred colleges, left behind the noise and burnout of a big university in Ohio and found myself in Windsor Hills, a small campus town tucked into the rolling greens of southern Kentucky. It wasn't a glamorous place. No towering dorms or city lights, just two-lane roads, dollar stores, and old tobacco barns barely holding up against the wind. The main reason I transferred was money. My scholarship barely covered tuition. Rent in Windsor Hills was cheap. That mattered. I found a house off Market Street, 15 minutes from campus. Split level, 4 bedrooms, 1 kitchen, a patchy lawn we never mowed. There were 4 of us living there. All guys, all around 20 or 21. I never got close with the others. We shared space, not friendship. I kept mostly to myself, studying, eating microwave burritos, occasionally watching reruns of old sitcoms on my laptop. My assigned roommate was Kyle, a film major from rural Tennessee with a mop of curly hair and big, restless eyes. He was friendly, maybe too much at first. Always talking. Rants about corrupt professors, fake classmates, how everyone in this town pretends they're better than they are. I laughed it off, called it artistic angst. But something about him always felt unstable. He'd walk around the house barefoot in the middle of the night, talking to himself. Sometimes he'd stare at the ceiling and whisper things I couldn't hear. He liked to make lists on napkins, random words, phrases, movie quotes. I tried to ignore it. First week, tolerable. Second week, concerning. By the third, I was locking my bedroom door at night. Kyle started leaving food in the sink. Not just plates or crumbs, whole meals, chicken bones, half-eaten sandwiches. When I asked about it, he just grinned and said, "I'm testing fermentation footage for a class. You wouldn't get it." He'd blast loud industrial music at 2 a.m., then deny it in the morning. Must have been something outside. He'd shrug, like I was the one going crazy. Worse, he'd talk about me, loudly, while I was nearby. I'd be walking down the hall and hear him telling one of the other guys, "He watches me when I sleep." Creepy, right? I didn't. Never did. But once that seed was planted, I noticed the way the others looked at me changed, like they weren't sure what to believe. I stopped sitting in the living room altogether. Then my debit card went missing. I kept it in my wallet, which never left my nightstand. A day later, there was a $40 charge at a gas station Kyle mentioned walking to the night before. I asked him straight up, "Hey, did you use my card?" He put his hand on his chest like I'd accused him of murder. Why would I steal from a roommate, man? That's messed up. I didn't believe him, but I also didn't have proof. I told the landlord. He laughed, actually laughed, said, "Boys will be boys. Figure it out like grown men, or move." That was the first night I stayed at the campus library. Second floor, between the stacks. Cold, quiet, and safer than home. Sleeping at the library wasn't part of the plan. At first I told myself it was just temporary. Maybe 2 nights, 3, tops. But it stretched into weeks. I'd sneak in a pillow, roll up a hoodie, and wedge myself between the psychology and business sections. No one noticed. No one cared. The staff assumed I was studying. I started showering at the gym, kept deodorant, a toothbrush, and a clean shirt in my backpack. Learned how to eat quietly from vending machines. I became invisible on purpose. Then Kyle started texting me. Random stuff at 2 or 3 in the morning. One night he wrote, "You'll regret leaving." I hadn't told him I was staying away. I blocked his number. The next day, he messaged me through a burner Facebook account with just a profile picture of static. "Room's quieter without you, feels wrong." I reported it to campus housing. They were sympathetic, but the house was off campus, out of their hands. "We'll keep an eye on it," they said. They wouldn't. My stomach hurt all the time. I started skipping class. Couldn't focus. I'd shake during presentations. People said I looked pale, tired. "Are you okay?" they'd ask. No one really wanted the answer. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't safe. I just needed out. I found a listing on Craigslist. Small room behind a house near the truck stop. No furniture, but the woman renting it seemed kind. Older, quiet. Didn't ask questions. Said I could move in the next day. I packed everything I owned into 2 duffel bags, left behind a few books and the sheets I didn't want to touch anymore. It was raining when I left, not a thunderstorm, just that steady, cold kind of rain that turns your backpack into a sponge. I didn't call a cab. I didn't want to risk him knowing. As I started walking down Market Street, soaked and hunched, I heard footsteps. Kyle. He wasn't holding anything, just walking behind me, 2 blocks back, umbrella tucked under one arm, smiling like we were headed to class together. He never called out, never said a word. He just followed. I ducked into a gas station and stayed there until I was sure he was gone. I didn't cry. I just stood by the snack aisle pretending to browse trail mix until my hands stopped shaking. I moved into the new place that night. No ceremony, no goodbye. Just silence. He still texted. Not often, but enough to keep me on edge. Quotes from horror movies, images of doorknobs. Once, a photo of my old desk chair with the caption, "Still warm." I changed my number, reported it again. Police said, "Unless there's a threat, it's not actionable." Campus shrugged. No record, no leverage. I started walking with keys between my fingers, double locking every door, reading about restraining orders, and I learned something about small towns. They protect their own version of normal. You can scream without anyone hearing. Even now, I triple-check roommate ads. I Google them. ask for social media, talk to past renters. I listen for red flags, raised voices, oversharing, obsession with being misunderstood. If someone talks too much about how everyone's against them, I leave. Pay attention to red flags, especially when no one else will. Some dangers don't scream, they whisper, they charm. They twist your reality until you question yourself. Trust your gut, not the people telling you to just deal with it. And never ever ignore the little things, because in hindsight, they're never little. You don't plan on ending up in a place like Maple Hollow, Missouri. It just sort of happens when the rest of your life stalls out. I was 19 when I moved in with my Aunt Connie. My mom was deep into her third stay at rehab, and college had gone up in smoke after one too many failed classes and an empty bank account. Connie lived in a ranch-style house behind a soybean field with 2 cats, a glass rooster collection, and a silent TV that played reruns of game shows she never watched. I needed a job. Any job. That's how I landed at Penny's Diner, the only place in town open 24 hours and lit up like a casino sign swallowed by fog. I worked the late shift, 5 p.m. to 1 a.m., 5 nights a week. Tips were bad, hours were long, and the smell of grease stuck to my clothes no matter how many showers I took. Penny's wasn't charming, it was tired. Brown vinyl booths, silver napkin holders that always jammed, and a jukebox that skipped halfway through Lion Eyes every time. I wiped tables, refilled coffee, and nuked frozen pies in the back. Our regulars were townies, truckers, and the occasional teen looking to dodge curfew. And then there was her. She came in around 11:30 most nights, slipped into the corner booth under the jukebox like it was hers by right. Long black hair, always the same gray hoodie, sleeves pulled over her hands. She never ordered more than black coffee and dry toast, and she never broke eye contact. I mean that. She stared, not with flirtation or boredom, but with this sharp kind of curiosity, like I was a problem she was trying to solve. It creeped me out, but I didn't say anything. You learn quickly not to make waves in small towns, especially when everyone says, "She's harmless, just odd." They always say that. Until she smiled. The first time she spoke to me was a Thursday, right before closing. The diner was quiet except for the humming of the neon lights outside and the occasional crackle of bacon grease on the griddle. I walked over with her check and said, mostly to break the silence, "Same as always, huh?" She looked up, still holding her mug with both hands, and said in this soft, flat voice, "You remind me of my brother. He's dead." And then she smiled. Not a warm smile, not even a sad one. It was crooked, like someone imitating what they thought smiling was supposed to look like. Her lips curled, but her eyes didn't move. I don't know how to explain it except to say, it felt rehearsed, like it had been practiced in a mirror. I gave a nervous chuckle, mumbled something about the weather, and stepped away. But for the rest of the shift, I couldn't shake the image. The way she said, "He's dead," like it was just a passing comment. When I clocked out and went to the back lot to my car, I noticed her, standing across the street under the lamplight, still wearing the hoodie, just watching me. She didn't move, didn't wave. I got in the car without looking back. That night I barely slept. I didn't tell Aunt Connie. What would I say? That a quiet girl at work gave me the creeps? People don't take you seriously when nothing technically happened, but I started watching her more closely after that. She always came alone, always paid in cash, and that same seat, every time, every single time. The night it got real was the Saturday shift. We'd been steady all evening, truckers mostly, and I'd barely noticed her come in. She was already in the corner booth by the time I brought her toast. This time I didn't say anything, just dropped the plate and left. I couldn't stomach another cryptic comment or dead-eyed grin. At 1:04 a.m. I clocked out. The air outside smelled like wet gravel and exhaust. My car was in its usual spot, back of the alley, just past the dumpster. I walked up and froze. All 4 tires were slashed, not just deflated, slashed. deep, deliberate cuts. I stood there like an idiot, staring, waiting for my brain to catch up to what I was seeing. I spun around. Empty alley, no cameras, no people, just the faint glow of Penny's neon lights behind me. I didn't scream, didn't cry. I just started walking. It took me nearly an hour to get home. Every sound on the road made me jump. A raccoon knocked over a trash can and I nearly bolted. The next morning I called the sheriff. They sent a deputy out who squinted at the tires, took a couple photos on his phone and shrugged. Could have been kids. We'll ask around. I brought up the girl. He looked at me, long and strange, and said, "She doesn't really have folks. Her brother died a few years ago. Car wreck out on 12. She's around, but not dangerous." Then he gave me this look, like don't push it, like he didn't want me asking more. That's the thing about small towns. Weird is tolerated as long as it's familiar. The sheriff knew her. That was enough. For him. After that, I saw her everywhere. At the gas station when I went to fill up my aunt's car, sitting at the bench outside the laundromat, walking slowly past the diner on nights I didn't work, always alone, always still, and always staring. I began calling in sick. The manager got irritated. "You're not the first person to have weird customers," he said. "You want to work or not?" I didn't respond. Sleep became harder. I kept thinking I'd see her through the window, hear her voice at the door. The feeling wasn't terror, it was fatigue. Like my mind was fraying at the edges from being under constant surveillance I couldn't prove. I started keeping the blinds shut, slept with a flashlight under my pillow. Aunt Connie noticed but didn't say anything. She'd seen too much in her life to ask about things people didn't want to talk about. One night I found a folded note under the windshield wiper of her car in the driveway. No words, just a smudged, smiley face drawn in pen. That's when I knew I couldn't stay. I left Maple Hollow the next morning. Didn't give notice, didn't say goodbye. Just packed a duffel bag, borrowed Aunt Connie's car, and drove 2 towns over to my cousin Wyatt's place. Told him I needed a few weeks to figure things out. I never went back for the car. I don't even know if it's still parked behind Penny's. The girl? Haven't seen her since. But sometimes when I work late at the grocery store now, midnight shifts stocking shelves, I still get that feeling. Like someone is behind me, not walking, not breathing, just watching. And I wonder if she ever found someone else who looked like her brother. Or if she's still sitting in that corner booth, toast in front of her, smile ready. Trust your discomfort, even when no one else sees the threat. We're trained to be polite, to be rational, to explain away the strange things we feel. But not everything can be measured or proven. Sometimes your gut knows what your mind hasn't caught up to yet. And sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one you should be most afraid of. People think rock bottom is loud, screaming fights, broken glass, slamming doors. But mine was quiet. I just found out my boyfriend of 3 years was cheating on me with some woman from work. I didn't catch him red-handed. That would have at least given me something to yell about. No, I found out through a mutual friend who accidentally texted me instead of her sister. She's gonna freak when she sees them at the brewery tonight. I did freak, just not at him. I packed 2 bags, 1 duffel, 1 old hiking backpack, and walked out the front door of the apartment we'd shared in Millbridge, Georgia, population around 6,000. No car, no cash except what was in my checking account, which was $28.14. I called a friend I thought would let me crash on her couch, but she texted back, "Sorry, girl, not a good time." It never is. By 11:30 p.m., I had walked the length of the town twice, trying to figure out what to do. I ended up in Morgan Square, this tiny plaza with a cracked brick fountain, a few old oak trees, and 2 iron benches. There were no restaurants open, no public restrooms, no late-night convenience stores. Just me, my bags, and the dark. I chose the bench farthest from the streetlights, figuring I wouldn't attract too much attention. I was wearing a hoodie, black jeans, and my old red scarf, the one my grandmother had knitted me in high school. It still smelled like dryer sheets. I sat down, pulled the scarf tight around my neck, tucked my bags under my legs, and tried to convince myself I wasn't in danger. It was almost midnight, and I was officially homeless. I must have drifted in and out of sleep. The square was so quiet I could hear the wind scraping dead leaves across the bricks. At 2:30 a.m. I heard footsteps. I opened my eyes just in time to see a man sit down on the other end of the bench. He was probably in his mid-40s, with a scruffy beard, gray hair at the temples, and a faded green jacket that looked military surplus. In one hand, he held a white plastic grocery bag that sagged from something heavy inside. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Gasoline, faint but sharp. The second was that he didn't even look at me at first. He just sat back, like this was routine for him, like this was his bench. Then he turned. "Got a cigarette?" His voice wasn't threatening, just low, gravelly, and too casual for 2:30 in the morning. "No, sorry," I said. He kept looking at me. "You sure?" "Yeah." He didn't press after that. Just nodded and leaned back against the bench, letting the grocery bag rest on the ground between his feet. He looked up at the trees overhead like we were sitting there together on purpose. I didn't move. Didn't know what to do. My phone was at 4%, and I didn't know where the nearest safe place was anyway. We sat like that for what felt like forever, me curled at one end, every nerve in my body on edge, and him sitting at the other, occasionally glancing my way like I was part of the scenery. He never spoke again, but the silence between us got heavier every minute. After maybe 15 minutes of that unbearable silence, I stood up. My legs were stiff, and my heart was thudding so hard I felt it in my throat. "I should go," I mumbled. He didn't respond, didn't even look at me. I took a few steps, half expecting him to follow. He didn't. Just sat there like a ghost pinned to the bench. I walked fast toward First Street, where I remembered seeing a 24-hour diner once before with flickering signage. When I reached it, I stood outside the door pretending to look at the menu posted in the window. I didn't even have enough for a coffee, but it gave me an excuse to be somewhere with light and people. Inside were 2 tired waitresses and a few old guys playing cards at the back. I hovered there for maybe 30 minutes before I walked to a church nearby and sat on the steps. I waited until sunrise. The square was about 5 blocks away. I figured the man had left by now. My duffel and backpack were too heavy to drag around everywhere, and I hadn't seen any shelters or safe places open. I thought I'd just get my stuff and figure out my next move. When I got back to Morgan Square, the bench was empty, but my things were gone. Not just stolen, gone. My backpack, my duffel, even the plastic water bottle I'd been using. There was nothing left except for my red scarf, which was now neatly folded and placed in the center of the bench. I hadn't folded it like that. I walked to the sheriff's office around 7:30 a.m. They didn't open until 8, so I sat outside the door like a stray dog waiting for a handout. When they finally let me in, I tried to explain what had happened. The deputy behind the desk, a short, middle-aged man with a mustache that looked drawn on, just blinked. "You were sleeping on a park bench?" "Yeah. I didn't have anywhere else to go." "Well, that's not exactly safe," he said, as if I hadn't figured that out already. They asked me for a list of the stolen items, which I gave. 1 duffel bag with 2 changes of clothes, my phone charger, a half-used bottle of shampoo, an ID, a toothbrush. Nothing they could track. No serial numbers. No video footage. "There's no cameras in the square," the deputy added. "Just trees." He handed me a printed list of shelters in nearby counties. I called the closest one on his office phone. "We're full," the woman said. "Try again tomorrow." That was it. That was all they could do. No real report. No case number. Just a shrug and a printout. As I walked out of the sheriff's office, I looked back at the waiting room. A woman was crying quietly in the corner. No one looked up. That was when I knew. Girls like me don't go missing. We disappear. I used the last few dollars I had to take a bus to the next town over. just large enough to have a bus station and a public laundromat. I spent the night there pretending I was waiting on someone. I cleaned my scarf in the sink of the bathroom, dried it under the hand dryer, and tied it around my neck like armor. The next day I found a food pantry. The lady there, Miss Clarice, gave me a granola bar and quietly slid me the number of a nearby women's shelter. It was small, but they had a spot. That's where I stayed for the next 2 months, until I got a job working the register at a hardware store. I never saw the man in the green jacket again. I don't know if he stole my things, or if someone came after I left. But I still remember the way he sat there beside me like I belonged to the night just like he did. He didn't speak much, didn't touch me, didn't threaten. But he didn't have to. Because what stayed with me wasn't what he did. It was how easy it was for me to vanish while he remained. Being invisible isn't safe, it's dangerous. In small towns and quiet corners, people like to pretend bad things don't happen. But they do. And when you're young, broke, and alone, the scariest thing isn't the darkness. It's how easy it is for no one to notice you're lost in it. No one's coming to save you. So learn to keep moving, even when no one's watching. Especially then. You ever land in a place so quiet it feels like the world's holding its breath? That was Brightonvale, Illinois. Population just over 3,000. Small enough for folks to wave whether they knew your name or not, but big enough that there were always eyes on you. I came in late 2020, just before the weather turned. I'd just gotten out of a relationship with my boss back in St. Louis. It ended like you'd expect. Messy, lopsided, and with me walking away from the job, the apartment, and the life I'd been trying to build. I was 26, broke, burnt out, and carrying more baggage than I could pack. Brightonvale was supposed to be a reset. I found a room above a bait shop with weak heat and a flickering hallway light. I didn't care. It was cheap, it was mine, and it didn't come with anyone expecting anything from me. The only work I could get was overnight shifts at Holloway's Pharmacy, the local drugstore that still stocked handwritten labels and had one of those coin-op blood pressure machines in the back. I worked 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. 5 nights a week, counting stock, tossing expired aspirin, wiping down dusty shelves. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid. The first thing I learned about small towns, they remember things. Your car, your shoes, your voice, where you came from, and me. I stuck out like a neon light in a dark room. But I kept my head down. I worked hard. I said yes, ma'am, and no, sir. I didn't complain. Still, somehow that wasn't enough. Chuck was one of those guys who looked like he'd been carved from chewing tobacco and old leather. Mid-40s, trucker hat always on, sleeves rolled, whether it was July or January. Said he'd worked at Holloway's for longer than most people in this town been alive. He was nice to me at first. Too nice. He'd hover around when I was doing stock in aisle 6. Lean in too close, and ask questions that weren't really questions. Bet you're used to a faster pace in the city, huh? Don't get too lonely working nights by yourself, do you? I laughed it off, smiled like I didn't hear the undertones. Because that's what you do when you need a job and don't want to rock the boat. One night, right before clock out, he lingered near the time card machine. I could give you a ride home, you know, just being neighborly. I declined, politely like someone taught me once. No thank you, I'm good. He shrugged, but I saw the way his smile faded. Subtle, sharp. That was the night it shifted. He never asked again. But he also stopped saying anything at all. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was loaded. Every aisle I stocked suddenly had something misfiled. I'd go to grab an inventory sheet and find it missing. One night he bumped into me and spilled a box of cold medicine all over the floor. Clumsy night, huh? He said loud enough for the manager to hear. Another time, he accidentally knocked his coffee over, straight onto my phone. Fried it. Just a hot puddle of steaming sugar and electronics. I had no way to get a ride, no GPS, no emergency contacts, just me and a town that didn't believe in streetlights after 9 p.m. And the worst part? He never raised his voice, never said anything direct. It was all done with a smile. That's the kind of trouble you can't prove. I waited 2 weeks before I said anything. I walked into the manager's office, a cramped back room with fluorescent lighting and a wall calendar from 2016 still pinned above the desk, and told her I thought Chuck was making things difficult, sabotaging my work, maybe even lying about me. She sighed before I'd even finished. "Chuck's been with us a long time," she said. "He's a little rough around the edges, sure, but he's loyal." I nodded, trying not to look too disappointed. "It just feels like he's trying to get me in trouble." "Don't take it personally," she interrupted. "That's just Chuck's way." That line, that exact phrase, it sank into my chest like a stone. I heard it again later that week when a coworker pulled me aside to warn me that Chuck was telling people I'd been hooking up with customers after hours. "He probably doesn't mean anything by it," she said. "Guys talk." I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Because where would it go? People started looking at me different, smirking, whispering. One girl on my shift asked, "You in trouble or something?" I didn't even know what to say. I started triple-checking my work. Took pictures of shelves before I left, even though I didn't have a phone anymore and had to borrow a cheap disposable camera. I bought a flip phone off Craigslist just to have emergency access. Still, I got written up twice. Missed items. Inventory errors. Things I knew I hadn't done. But what could I prove? I was new. I was the outsider. He was just Chuck. And in Brighton Vale, loyalty beats truth every time. When I finally quit, I thought maybe there'd be a conversation. Some question about why. But the manager just nodded, said, "Good luck," and turned back to her clipboard. I felt disposable. 2 weeks later, I applied for a job at a pharmacy 2 towns over. The manager liked my resume, said I was exactly what they needed for their late shift. "We'll just call your last place for a reference, and we should be good to go." I never heard back. 3 days later, I followed up. The position was no longer available. A coincidence, maybe. Until it happened again with another place. Same routine. After the third, I asked one of the assistant managers there, a girl I knew from a Facebook group, and she messaged back, "Your old boss said you had some issues with behavior. Sorry." Chuck didn't need to make a scene to hurt me. He just had to make a couple of calls, and no one questioned him. Because in towns like Brighton Vale, reputations aren't earned. They're passed down like family recipes. I started picking up gig jobs, dog walking, cleaning houses. Eventually, I got weekend hours at a thrift store off Route 40. Paid cash, no questions. It wasn't what I planned, but I didn't have much choice left. I never filed a formal complaint. Every now and then I tell myself I should have, that maybe someone else will, someday. But part of me didn't want to be that girl, the one who causes problems, the one who can't take a joke, the outsider who got too sensitive. People always say, "Speak up," but they never warn you what happens when you do, and no one listens. In Brighton Vale, silence is a currency. The less you say, the more people trust you, even if they're wrong, even if they know. Now I walk with my head down but my eyes wide open. I keep receipts. I write down everything. I don't accept favors. And I never let someone like Chuck talk me into silence again. I still live above that bait shop. The light in the hallway still flickers. But I'm slowly getting back up. It's not fast, and it's not fair, but it's mine. In small towns, silence protects the wrong people. When loyalty trumps accountability, bad men thrive. And girls like me, the quiet ones, the ones just trying to get by, get marked as the problem. But the truth doesn't go away just because nobody wants to hear it. So speak up anyway, even if it costs you, even if you have to whisper it in the dark when no one's looking. Because surviving quietly isn't the same as living free. October 2022 was the kind of cold that sat in your bones and didn't budge. I was 27, stuck in the third year of a high school teaching job in Springfield, Illinois, and slowly unraveling. Too many lesson plans, too little sleep, and a creeping sense that I wasn't doing anything that mattered. Ethan, my boyfriend of almost 4 years, was a paramedic, which meant we saw each other mostly in passing. He'd walk in when I was half asleep. I'd leave when he was dead tired. We fought a lot, mostly about nothing. Dishes, rent, whether or not Chicago was a pipe dream. But deep down, I think we both knew what we were really fighting about. We were worn down and drifting, and neither of us wanted to be the one to say it out loud. So when Ethan suggested we take a weekend trip, just drive somewhere quiet, I said yes before he finished the sentence. No itinerary, just space. We ended up picking a dot on the map called Wood Creek, 2 hours out from Springfield. The kind of place you'd drive through and forget before your next gas stop. A diner, a boarded-up pharmacy, and one motel with a neon sign that blinked slower than a heartbeat. Sunset Pines. We pulled in just before 9 p.m. The parking lot was gravel and mud, and our headlights caught a line of rooms that all looked the same. Beige siding, screen doors barely hanging on, and buzzing lights that made you feel watched. Inside the lobby, the man behind the desk didn't even glance up, just said, "Checking in," like it was muscle memory. His hair was thin and white, and he had this brittle look to him, like an old fence post that's been through too many winters. He handed us a brass key with a tarnished 7 on it. "End of the left hallway," he mumbled. Ethan didn't say much, just nodded, still scrolling his phone. I bit my tongue. No point starting another fight. Not here. But as soon as we opened the door to room 7, the silence between us broke, in the worst way possible. There was someone sitting on the bed. At first, I thought maybe housekeeping messed up. That maybe someone was still in the room, checking out late. But the woman on the bed didn't move. She was sitting cross-legged, facing the corner of the room like a kid in trouble. Her hair was wet, stringy, like she hadn't towel dried it. She wore a pale blue dress that hung awkwardly off her frame, like it belonged to someone else entirely. I stepped back without realizing it. My voice came out quieter than I expected. "Ma'am?" No answer, no blink, no recognition that we were even there. Ethan stood frozen beside me, his phone lowered. Hey," he said, almost too casually. "This isn't our room." Still nothing. She didn't flinch, didn't turn, just stared at the blank wall. Something about her wasn't just off, it was hollow. That's the word that came to mind. Hollow. Like someone had taken the person out and left the shell. We closed the door more slowly than we should have. Back in the hallway, we just looked at each other. Ethan tried to laugh. Probably some homeless lady snuck in, meth or something. I didn't laugh. I said, "She didn't even look real." We went back to the front desk. The old man finally looked up when we walked in. And when Ethan said, "There's someone in room 7, the man just stared past us, toward the hallway. Then he muttered, "She's not supposed to be here tonight." He didn't explain, didn't apologize, just opened a drawer and pulled out another key. "Try room 9. That was it. We didn't ask more questions. Maybe we should have. But honestly, I didn't want to know. Not right then. Room 9 was just as depressing. Stale smoke smell, scratchy sheets, a sink that dripped all night. Ethan passed out after a few minutes. I stayed up. I kept replaying that moment in my head. Her posture, the wet hair, the way she stared into nothing like it was trying to stare back. And the worst part? She didn't seem surprised we were there. She looked like she'd been waiting. Morning came fast, but it didn't feel like we'd slept at all. I nudged Ethan awake around 8, and we packed our things in near silence. No breakfast, no coffee, just the weight of something unspoken following us out of room 9. The front office was locked. A paper sign hung in the window. Closed for cleaning. No clerk, no receipt, no sign that we'd ever really been there. On the drive back to Springfield, Ethan turned up the radio. Loud. Like he was trying to fill the space with noise so we wouldn't have to talk about last night. I didn't press it. But when we got home, I finally asked him, Do you think that woman was okay? He shrugged. Just some local off her meds. Happens. And that was that. He moved on like it was a weird little hiccup in an otherwise boring weekend. I couldn't. That night I stared at the ceiling for hours. I couldn't get her image out of my head. The wet hair, the corner, that sense of quiet wrongness. I started zoning out during work. Mid-lecture, I'd forget what I was even saying. One of my students asked if I was okay. I said I was just tired. That wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. I couldn't explain it, not even to myself. It wasn't just that we saw someone creepy. It was that it didn't feel like a mistake. It felt orchestrated, like we were meant to open that door. Ethan kept brushing it off, kept calling it a funny story when friends asked about the trip. She was just some cracked-out lady, he'd say, then change the subject. But late at night I'd check my phone and try to find something, anything about Sunset Pines. No website, no business listing, just a few blurry photos on Google Maps and a string of reviews that looked like they hadn't been touched since 2015. One of them said, "Don't stay in room 7, ever." We broke up about a month later. I think it was inevitable, but room 7 sped it up. Ethan didn't understand why it still haunted me. He thought I was overreacting, maybe even making parts of it worse in my head. But it didn't feel exaggerated. It felt like my brain had gotten stuck in that room and refused to leave. He said, "You just need to let it go. Nothing happened." And I said, "That's exactly the problem." I stopped going out, started double-checking every lock. If the room I was in got too quiet, I'd turn something on, white noise, a podcast, anything. Silence felt dangerous now. There was this weird shift in me I couldn't reverse. Not fear, exactly. Not trauma in the usual sense. Just a deep unease that never quite left. I stopped driving alone on back roads. If a motel had more than 2 negative reviews, I passed on it. And I started watching people more closely. Silent people, still ones. Part of me thinks it wasn't the woman that got to me. It was the way no one else cared. Not Ethan, not the clerk. No one asked who she was or why she was there. They just accepted it. And maybe that's what really haunts me. Not that we saw something unexplainable, but that we walked away from it like it didn't matter. It's been over a year now. I moved apartments, switched jobs. I'm in a better place mostly. But every so often I'll catch myself checking the far corner of a room before I settle in. And sometimes late at night I think about her again. The way she sat, the feeling she gave off. Not like she was lost, but like she belonged there more than we did. I've stopped trying to solve it. There's no clean answer. No twist ending. Just a hollow woman in a forgotten room. And a version of myself I left behind in that hallway. But I still tell people one thing when they travel, especially if they're staying in a roadside motel. Don't take the last room at the end of the hall. Some doors are left open for a reason. And sometimes what disturbs us most isn't what we see, but how easily we pretend it never happened. I wasn't born in Cedar Hollow, but I've been here long enough to know how it breathes. The place exhales secrets like fog off a pond, thick and slow, curling into your lungs before you realize you're choking on something unspoken. I came here in 2011, fresh out of WVU with a social work degree and that tragic cocktail of optimism and student loan debt. First few years I tried to fix everything. Thought I could rewrite the story of every busted trailer and bruised kid. But Cedar Hollow has a way of wearing people down, like river water on rock. Eventually you stop asking why folks don't talk about certain things. Like why the First Baptist Church keeps a whole pew roped off, or why no one goes past the old Cooper place after sunset. It's been just over a year since the night James, Sarah, and little Tyler Cooper died. The report said it was a botched home invasion, transient drifters, maybe drugged out, got spooked and ran. I signed off on that summary, even shook the sheriff's hand outside the coroner's office. But the truth ain't in the paper, and it sure as hell ain't in the case file. The truth is smaller, quieter, It fits in the hand of a 9-year-old girl with steady fingers and no conscience. Her name was Hannah Cooper. She was in my caseload. The last time I saw her, she offered me a slice of blackberry cobbler and asked me what death smells like. She said it with the same tone most kids use to ask if you've ever been to Disney World. I laughed it off, drove home, poured a drink, told myself she was just another traumatized kid saying weird things. That was 2 days before her family turned up dead. 2 days before the town decided it was better to lie together than break apart alone. Now it's October again, and the fog's rolling in thick through the hollers. This morning I opened my mailbox and found a pink hair ribbon. It was the same kind Hannah wore to school picture day. No return address, no note. But I already knew what it meant. She's alive. And she remembers. I stood there, fingers numb despite the warm October air, staring at that damn ribbon like it might bite me. It was faded, like it had been buried or left out in the rain, but still unmistakable. Cheap fabric, frayed at the ends, with a little unicorn button hot glued to the center. It was Hannah's, no doubt in my mind. I took it inside, shut the door, and locked it. I never used to lock the door here. Cedar Hollow was the kind of town where you left your keys in the truck and still found a basket of zucchini on your porch come summer. That kind of trust doesn't break easily. But when it breaks all the way through. I didn't call the sheriff. Clay Whitmore and I go back a long way. Football team, class of '07, same graduation party. But we stopped trusting each other after the Cooper mess. He came to my office that week, jaw tight, eyes cold, and said, "Ethan, this town needs closure, not chaos. You want to help? You shut up." So I did. I shut up and watched a little girl vanish behind a smokescreen of favors and hush money. That night I drove to the Cooper's old ranch. The for sale sign was gone. Stolen, they said, but nobody ever put up another one. The yard was overgrown, swing set rusted stiff. The windows were boarded up with plywood the color of dried blood. And still, something in me whispered, "She comes back here." Inside, everything had been gutted by the cleanup crew. No furniture, no carpets, just echoes. But in Tyler's old room, I found a stick figure drawn on the wall in black crayon. 4 people, 3 with X's for eyes, 1 smiling. It hadn't been there a year ago. I backed out of the room and nearly tripped over a toy, a green dinosaur, its neck ripped halfway off. That's when I realized I wasn't alone. There was giggling from the hallway, soft, girlish, high-pitched. I pulled my grandfather's revolver from my waistband and stood there, heart thumping in my ears. But when I turned the corner, there was nothing. Just silence. The next morning I sat in my truck outside First Baptist. The Fall Festival Committee was already stringing lights across the parking lot, kids carving pumpkins on hay bales, pretending nothing was broken in this town. I went inside. I hadn't been to service in a year, but some things never change. The same hymns, the same stained glass window with the lamb and the shepherd, and the same empty pew, second row, far left, with velvet rope cordoning it off like a crime scene. I asked Pastor Glenn about it once. He just said, "That pew's reserved for the Lord's grace." Bullshit. I slipped into the back pew and watched the service until the final amen. Afterward, I caught up with Gloria Simmons, the church secretary. "Gloria," I said, "anyone new in town lately?" She furrowed her brow. "Like, visitors?" "Number permanent. Staying." She hesitated. "Well, we got a new waitress at Maybell's Diner. Quiet little thing. Real pale. Doesn't say much." I left before she could say more. I went straight to Maybell's, sat at the counter, ordered black coffee, and watched the girl behind the register. Slim, dark blonde hair, no name tag. Then she turned, and my stomach dropped. She looked exactly like Sarah Cooper. Not just similar, uncanny. Same profile. Same way she tucked her hair behind her ear. I waved her over. "You new around here?" She nodded. "Just moved down from Morgantown." You got family here? No, sir, she said, eyes flat. No family left. I didn't press, just watched her walk back toward the kitchen. The girl wasn't Sarah, but she had to be connected somehow. A cousin, maybe, or something worse. That night, I dreamed of the Cooper house. In the dream, Hannah stood at the foot of my bed. She held a knife in one hand and the pink ribbon in the other. You were supposed to protect me, she whispered, and then she smiled. People forget how loud a small town can be when it wants to keep something quiet. In Cedar Hollow, silence isn't the absence of noise, it's a language, a warning. And the loudest silence of all lives near the edge of town, where the forest curls like fingers around the old well. Locals say it's dried up, others say it goes down forever. I hadn't been there since I was 16 and drunk on cheap whiskey and dares. But tonight, I found myself drawn to it like a moth to firelight. Maybe it was the dreams. Maybe it was the stick figures showing up in my case files. Maybe it was the static-filled radio whispering children's songs in the dead of night. But something in me knew. If she was still in town, she'd be there. The well sat half swallowed by the earth, lined with moss and old bricks. I stood over it, flashlight beam flickering, and called out, "Hannah." Nothing. "I know what they did. I know where they sent you." Still silence. Then, from the woods behind me, a voice. "You never told them the truth." I turned fast, flashlight trembling. She stood 10 feet away, barefoot, mud to her ankles, hair matted like straw. Hannah. Older now, but not by much. Like time had skipped her. Her eyes were dull and too big for her face. "I tried," I said. "Number you chose to forget. I wanted to protect you. You wanted to protect yourself." The woods fell quiet again. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled something out. Another ribbon. This one read, "You left this in my house," she said, "after the funeral. I watched you cry in Tyler's room." I didn't remember leaving it, but I believed her. "What do you want from me?" I asked. She stepped closer. "To finish what I started." The next day, I didn't go to work. Couldn't. I sat in my living room, gun on the table, every shadow stretching too long, every creak of the house sounding like footsteps I didn't want to follow. Then came a knock at the door. I opened it slow, .38 in hand. Sheriff Clay stood on my porch. "We need to talk," he said. I let him in. He didn't sit, just paced like a man avoiding something too heavy to hold. "She's back, isn't she?" I asked. He nodded. "She came to the station, asked for you, said she had a story to finish." "And you just let her go?" "Ethan, she's a kid. What the hell are we supposed to do? Lock her up? For what? The Coopers? We buried that." "That's the problem," I said. "We buried it." Clay stared at me. "You think you're clean in all this? You're the one who pushed for silence. She needs help, not headlines, remember that?" I did. I hated him for being right. "She's dangerous," I said. "She's broken," he replied. That night, the fall festival went on like nothing was wrong. Laughter, cider, twinkle lights. And at 9:13 p.m., someone heard giggling by the old well. By 10:02, the power flickered. By 10:17, the girl working the ring toss booth was gone. All they found was a pink ribbon nailed to the tent pole. I still carry the .38. Not to stop her. To end it, if I have to. Some silences grow teeth, and Cedar Hollow's been smiling too long. Silence doesn't protect the innocent, it shelters the dangerous. When we choose comfort over truth, we become complicit in the very horrors we fear. What I remember most isn't the night they came. It's what happened the day after. Ma'am washing blood off my sleeves in the kitchen sink, humming like nothing was wrong. Da sitting at the table, his eyes fixed on the drizzle outside, hand wrapped around a cup of tea gone cold hours ago. That's the kind of silence you don't recover from. That's the kind that settles in your chest and grows teeth. I was 9 when we moved into the old surgery. Folks in Balfour Glen whispered behind their hands, calling it cursed. Ma'am said it was just a house with history. And Da, always the practical one, liked that the mortgage was half what it should have been. But I knew something was wrong the first night. There was a smell, not quite rot, not quite chemical, like someone tried to bury sickness under bleach. Ma'am said it was old doctor smell and laughed. I didn't laugh back. Iona, my sister, was 15 and already too cool for the likes of me. She spent her days glued to her phone, snapping pictures, painting her face like she was auditioning for one of those American dramas. She was supposed to keep an eye on me when Ma'am worked and Da drove nights down to Inverness. But mostly she just left me to myself. So I noticed things, like the cellar door that wouldn't stay shut, or the greasy handprints that reappeared on the windows each morning, high up where I couldn't have reached, or the way the floor creaked in the surgery at night like someone pacing. I told Mr. Dunlop at school about the man I saw outside with no shoes and eyes like wet stones. He gave me detention for lying and told Ma'am I had an overactive imagination. But I wasn't imagining the way the sheepdog across the glen wouldn't come near our fence, or how the neighbors crossed themselves when they passed our house. It got worse on March 17th. Iona was meant to be watching me. She was upstairs laughing at something on her phone. I was outside taking out the bins. That's when I saw them. 4 of them, maybe 5. One tall, the rest crawling like children who'd forgotten how to walk, wearing hospital gowns soaked through and clinging to gray skin, limbs twisted, moving wrong. One of them held something wet, with tubes hanging out, and they smiled. Wide and wrong. Not a human smile. I ran, tripped on the gravel, scraped my knees bloody, but I didn't stop. Slid inside, slammed the door, screamed for Iona. She rolled her eyes, called me a wee freak, and went back to her phone. They were still outside. I heard the tall one whisper through the letterbox. "Come see what we've unstitched." Ma'am and Da got home an hour later. I cried, told them everything. Da searched the garden, found nothing. Ma'am gave me a spoonful of cough syrup and sent me to bed. But I couldn't sleep. The shadows stretched long across my ceiling. I heard dripping from the bathroom even though the tap wasn't on. And in the dark, I swear I saw movement in the crack beneath my closet door. The next day, the village had opinions. "Just a nightmare," said the constable. "Might have been drifters playing tricks." Old Tam from the pub said, "That's what comes of letting kids live where blood's been spilled." Everyone knew Dr. McReady's story. He'd done a stint in the army, specialized in trauma surgery. Came home quiet, broken, set up the surgery. Then one day the police found him in the cellar with both wrists open and the smell of carbolic thick in the air. No one used that building since, till us. After my sighting, Da installed motion lights. Ma'am burned lavender and prayed. Iona didn't change a thing. Neither did the Hollow Men. They came back. Every night for a week. Sometimes just watching through the glass. Other times tapping, soft, like fingers on skin. Once, I found a glove, surgical, turned inside out, stuffed into my school bag. No one believed me. But I started locking my door and sleeping with a carving knife under my pillow. Because belief doesn't matter when they already know your name. It was the next March 17th when it all broke loose. Da was on shift. Ma'am was asleep early. Those blue pills made her heavy and slow. Iona was fighting with some boy over texts, ignoring everything like usual. And I heard them, outside. Not just tapping now, dragging, scratching. And then a laugh. Wet and wrong and close. I went to the window. The tall one was back. His hospital gown fluttered in the wind, revealing black veins stretched over ribs like wire. He raised one hand and waved. Behind him, the others dragged something heavy from the bushes. A sack. Moving. Iona didn't believe me until the back window shattered. I screamed. She screamed. Ma'am didn't wake. We barricaded the door with chairs. I held the knife. Iona called the police, crying into the phone. The things didn't come in. They just waited. Watched. until headlights finally spilled down the drive and the constable's truck rolled up. When he found us, Iona was shaking. I was silent. The back garden? Empty. Just muddy footprints. Too many. And the bin, tipped over, with that same gauze I'd seen before. No arrests, no real investigation. Just more whispers. Tinkers. Kids making it up. But the surgery was boarded up a month later. We moved to Sterling. Ma'am never spoke about it. Da drank more. Iona, well, she changed. I never slept right again. I'm 19 now. I work at the Fort William petrol station. Nights, mostly. Easy money, quiet roads. Just me and the hum of refrigeration. But every March 17th I find them. Surgical gloves, always in the bin room, inside out. One of them still warm once. I don't tell anyone. What's the point? No one visits me. Not ma'am, not Da. Iona stopped texting last year. I heard she's in Glasgow teaching yoga, pretending none of it happened. I keep to myself. Drink Irn-Bru with a little whiskey to keep the dreams soft. Read medical books I steal from charity shops. Somehow I just understand them. The diagrams, the procedures, like I always knew. Sometimes I wonder if that's what they left in me. Other times, I think they never left at all. I keep my Da's boning knife in my coat. Not for protection, for the night they finally finish what they started. And in the mist off the glen, when the wind shifts just right, I still hear the scalpels clink. They say silence is healing. But not in Balfour Glen. In that place, silence is a wound that festers, an absence where something should be, or worse, where something once was and wants back in. The surgery still stands. Boards rotted now, ivy swallowing the chimney. But the cellar? Still locked from the inside. Every year 1 or 2 sheep vanish. Every so often a hiker goes missing. They blame the weather, the foxes, always the foxes. But I know better. I know what I saw, what I felt. And one day soon, I'll go back. Not to prove anything, not to warn anyone, but to see if I can still hear them. Because part of me wonders if I belong to them now, or if they belong to me. Some wounds don't heal because no one dares speak them aloud. In silence, fear breeds. In denial, horror roots itself deep. The lesson? When a child says they're afraid, believe them. Before the silence grows teeth. You ever drive through a town so small it feels like it shouldn't exist? That's Blackspur. One highway in, one dusty scar out, and not a single tree for miles. It's the kind of place where rust never sleeps and neither does regret. I wasn't supposed to stay. Hell, I wasn't even supposed to stop. Just a few days doing field work for a geology PhD that was already circling the drain, and then I'd be gone. But like every poor bastard who ever got stranded in the outback, I learned too late that this land doesn't let go easy, and some ghosts don't like being ignored. The Diggers Rest pub sits lopsided on Hannon Street, like it's leaning in to hear your secrets. Inside, the air smells like stale beer, sweat, and stories that don't get told twice. That night, July 12th, 2018, I sat at the corner table watching the regulars play pool under a buzzing light fixture. The felt was green once, but now it looked like moldy sandpaper. I was on my last clean shirt. The university had cut my research grant after I decked a security guard who thought my field notes looked suspicious. I was living out of a rusted camper behind the methadone clinic, driving patients to appointments just to afford 2-minute noodles and cheap petrol. Blackspur didn't like outsiders, and I didn't blame them. The town still bore scars from the 1996 mine collapse, Rookery Mine, 23 men gone in under 4 minutes. But there was one name everyone said soft, Mad Dog Jock. Jock Madigan ran the Diggers Rest like a jailhouse, barrel-chested, balding, with one eye that never quite pointed the right way. They said he once beat a footy umpire so bad he swallowed 3 teeth. That night, he was already half-tanked and eyeing me like I owed him rent. He wandered over, accidentally, bumped into me, and dumped half a pint of XXXX gold down my shirt. "You spill something," I said, standing. problem, city boy? He sneered. His breath was Bundy and blood. I should have walked away, but I didn't. Instead, I let the handle of my screwdriver, still in my belt from the clinic van, slam into his throat. And just like that, I earned Blackspur's attention. The fight spilled out into the alley behind the pub, where the ground still stank of chemical runoff from when the mine used to dump its waste there. Jock came swinging wild, eyes bulging, nostrils flaring like a bull on meth. I dodged left, stumbled, felt red dirt grind into my palms. He was on me quick, boot aimed for my ribs. Then the voice cut through. Enough, Jock. Time to go home. We both froze. From the shadows, a figure stepped forward, lean and slow-moving like someone carrying every bad year of his life on his back. They called him the Super. No one knew his real name. Last surviving supervisor from the collapse, or so they said. Wore the same high-vis jacket every day, the orange now closer to rust. He carried a geologist's hammer in one hand, the kind with the flat edge worn smooth from too much time underground. Jock went pale, not scared, worse, like he'd already died once and just remembered. You ain't got the right, Jock rasped, backing away. The Super didn't move, just raised the hammer, not threatening, more like pointing. This is still mine, he said, even if the shaft's closed, even if the pumps are off. Jock's mouth opened to argue. Then he looked behind the Super. I don't know what he saw, but I watched his face fold in on itself. He turned and ran into the dark, and the Super looked at me. You earned your drink, he said, then walked off into the alley mist like he'd never been there at all. The next morning, Jock's ute was found abandoned near shaft number 4, one of the sealed entrances to Rookery. I didn't ask questions, didn't need to. Sergeant Knox from the local station shrugged it off. Dust got him, he said, like that explained everything. But I knew better. Blackspur doesn't talk about what's buried beneath. The mine pump shut down 22 years ago, but I'd hear locals complain their water still ran sour some days. I'd seen kids dare each other to run up to the chain link around the shafts and touch the rusted warning signs. But no one stepped past. Back at the pub, Jock's absence changed everything. Nobody asked about my screwdriver. Nobody mentioned the alley. The Digger's Rest even started stocking my favorite whiskey. But behind the tool shed, I saw something new. A fresh cement patch, still drying. And the Super's boots? Always damp, even on the driest mornings. Some folks said the ground was just settling. Others said nothing at all. I didn't sleep right after that. I left Blackspur that August, managed to scrape into a community college job down south, teaching intro geology to kids who didn't know a geode from a coffee mug. But I never shook it. The dreams. Something scratching at the windows of my dorm, even when I lived 3 stories up. The feeling that a shaft might open beneath my feet if I stood still too long. And every July, without fail, a postcard arrives. No return address, no message except, Jock says hello. The paper smells of sulfur and rust. Once I burned one, thought that'd end it. Didn't. The next year's card had a fingerprint in red. I started checking my rear view more often, watching shadows move on the roadside, listening for metal on stone when there should only be wind. The mine never closed. Not really. It's been years now. I tried finishing my PhD but never made it past the ethics review board. Something about my field report sounding unstable. Can't say I blame them. Sometimes I still hear the Super's voice, just a whisper telling me what rock used to be here, how far down the salt dome goes. As if the mine left something in me. Maybe it did. Maybe Jock's down there still screaming at shadows no one else sees. Maybe the Super never stopped clocking in. Or maybe Blackspur just keeps what it takes. They say the earth doesn't lie, but it forgets. Slowly. And sometimes it forgives. But not in Rookery. There, the ground remembers. And if you listen close, when the wind's right, you'll hear something knock back. They say Black Hollow never forgets. Not the miners who died coughing coal dust. Not the children lost in the woods. And sure as hell not what we stirred up that October. I was born here. Ethan Carter, 28, still bagging nails and loading propane tanks at Roy's Hardware on Main. I never left, though I had chances. Dad died in the Massey collapse when I was 10. Mom drank herself quiet by the time I was 16. That left me and Noah, my kid brother. Only 16 now, full of anger and stupid dreams. Mira, Derek, Lena, we all stuck around. Not because we loved the place, because we couldn't afford not to. Black Hollow's not the kind of town you escape. It's the kind you get buried in. We were just looking for something different that weekend. A break, a little hike, some laughs, maybe a flask passed around under the yellowing trees. We didn't mean to find the altar, and we sure as hell didn't mean to wake it up. It started simple. Mira suggested the hike, said we needed fresh air and fresh legs. Derek grumbled, Lena packed trail mix, and I brought my camera, figuring I could post some shots online, maybe pretend my life was something worth scrolling through. The path into Black Willow wasn't marked, but Derek knew where to cut through. The trees there bend like they're listening. The deeper you go, the quieter everything gets. No birds, no breeze, just that thick, still air pressing against your skin like a second shirt. We found the bones first, bleached animal bones strung from branches with twine, clicking in the windless woods like dry teeth. Someone's idea of art? Lena offered, forcing a smile, but Mira stopped walking. My gran used to say, when the forest strings bones, you walk the other way. We didn't. Then came the rusted mining gear, old pickaxes, helmets with cracked lights, all half sunk into the soil. Like the forest was digesting the past one shovel at a time. At the base of a hollowed birch, we found it, the altar. Stones stacked uneven, rotting food offerings, something that looked like dried blood on a tin plate. And in the dirt, a child's dress. Torn, stained. I laughed, nervous. This is some Blair Witch stuff, huh? Mira didn't laugh. Neither did Derek. I snapped a picture anyway. I wish to God I hadn't. That night I couldn't sleep. The woods felt like they followed me home. Around 1 a.m., my phone buzzed. A photo. No number. Just a shot of my front porch, taken minutes ago. I stared at the image, heart hammering, then got another message. This time, my bedroom window, curtains half open. I called Mira. She answered on the first ring. "You got one too?" she asked. "Yeah, my porch. My window. You?" "The hospital lot. I was working late. It's my car, Ethan. Just sitting there in the dark." Derek and Lena hadn't gotten anything. Yet. I couldn't sleep, so I set up an old security camera I got cheap from work. Next morning, I checked the footage. 5 minutes of nothing. Then a hooded figure. Just standing, facing the door. Not moving. And then, gone. No footsteps, no sound. I showed Derek. He just shook his head. "People don't vanish, man. That's not right." Then Lena called, voice shaking. "Binks is missing. He never runs off." We searched for hours. Nothing. That night, someone left Binks's collar. Just the collar, nailed to her back fence. The nail was old, rusted. The note under it read, "You took pictures. Now we take." The days blurred. The nights got worse. Mira stopped sleeping altogether. She started carrying pepper spray to work. Said she saw a face pressed to the ER glass. Security found nothing. Derek's shop got hit next. Not broken into, just desecrated. His tools untouched, but his workbench was covered in dead crickets. Appalachian omen. Bad death. His gran used to talk about it. He punched the wall so hard his knuckles split open. "I didn't ask for this," he growled. "You and your damn camera." I didn't argue. Noah started sleepwalking. We'd find him standing in the hallway whispering. Always the same thing. The lady in the trees. One night I found him outside, barefoot, shivering. just staring at the woods. Mira wanted to call the cops. Lena suggested we talk to a preacher. Derek started drinking heavier. Then my truck got keyed. A cross. Deep. Deliberate. And the final message came the next night. A wooden cross staked in my yard wrapped in fur. Binks's fur. Underneath it, in crooked handwriting, "Give them back." That was the night Noah vanished. We found his room empty. His shoes still by the door. A trail of footprints, bare, child-sized, leading toward the woods. We didn't hesitate. Flashlights, jackets, no time to think. The deeper we went, the colder it got. The wind died again. The trees leaned closer. Lena clutched Mira's hand like it was her only anchor. Then Derek saw it. A pit, freshly dug, shallow but lined with bones. Too small to be human, but too many to be normal. And there, at the base of a gnarled oak, was Noah, unconscious, pale, but alive. We scrambled down. Mira checked his vitals. Breathing, pulse, steady. I looked up and saw something. A shape, human but wrong, watching from the tree line, black as the space between stars. Then it melted into the woods. We didn't wait. We carried Noah out and didn't stop until we hit the road. He didn't wake until morning. He wouldn't speak. He still hasn't. No more photos, no more messages. But that didn't mean it was over. Mira quit the hospital, moved to Cincinnati, changed her number, never said goodbye. Derek's drinking turned from habit to problem. He won't go near the woods. Carries a knife on him now. Lena adopted a stray cat, but every creak sends her into panic. She keeps her windows shut even in the hottest summers. And me? I stayed. Someone had to look after Noah. He barely talks now. Just hums some tune we don't recognize and draws trees with hollow eyes. I deleted the photos, burned the camera, started keeping sage at the doors, salt on the windowsills. Some nights I still hear bones clinking in the wind. They say the past dies in places like this, but that's a lie. Some places don't let go. Black Hollow sure as hell won't. Some places wear their curses like skin, tight, quiet, and waiting. In our hunger to feel alive, we poked a sleeping wound. Curiosity is no match for memory, and some memories live in the roots,